Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced by North Idaho College located on Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guests.
We're so pleased to welcome you to our program. The title of the day's discussion is The Future of City Government in the Inland Northwest. And we're so pleased to have our mayor of the city of Coeur d'Alene. She took office in January of 2002, and we're very, very excited about her tenure as our mayor. We welcome Mayor Sandy Bloom.
Thank you.
Our mayor is a businesswoman and owns lots of property in our city. She's been a teacher and has really been in the forefront of progress in our city for a number of years. And congratulations, Mayor Bloom. And I'm correct to say that you're the first woman mayor of our city. As I said at a banquet that you spoke at, it's way overdue.
Thank you.
So thank you for being here, and we just look forward to this interview. As always, I'm very pleased to welcome Janelle Burke, our regular panelist, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho, and we shall invite Janelle to start the questioning with Mayor Sandy Bloom.
We're going to be talking some about the future of cities in the inland Northwest, and I know that some meetings have been held recently with regard to cities and other governmental agencies in a spirit of cooperation. Can you tell our viewers something about that?
Sure. We formed a partnership just after I took office with John Powers from Spokane. We've met twice and hope to meet at least monthly. And we're concentrating really on some specific areas: economic growth, the economic concerns in our region, public safety, education, and then water, both the aquifer and the river. So those are the four areas we've been discussing.
And I think you're also talking with some of the local governments as well. What is happening with regard to that?
Well, we've signed a memorandum of understanding with the county commissioners, and so we plan to form a good partnership with them. And in July, we hope to hold the first coalition of North Idaho mayors, everyone north from Lewiston to the Canadian border, first time ever. So we're working on that also.
When you are talking with the county commissioners, what kinds of issues are coming up between the city and the county?
Well, right off the bat, EMS and the new services, the emergency services, right?
Yes.
So we're working closely with them and with the new Joint Powers Board. Again, public safety, how we can combine our forces to improve public safety. Certainly planning. I think we talked a lot about the fact that we can't be planning just within our own boundaries, and we need to communicate better with them on the planning for the county as a whole.
There is, of course, very many overlapping areas, and you just mentioned a couple, the EMS, the emergency medical services, the planning, of course, emergency services in general. There are also some police and fire issues that are probably overlapping as well. Is that true?
Right, particularly when it comes to shared communication, training, shared training, just the information that they can share among themselves, again, increases the safety factor in Coeur d'Alene substantially. So definitely we need a strong partnership there.
Mayor Bloom, I've had the privilege over the years, along with Dr. Sidney Duncan at the University of Idaho, who's now retired, to do what we call futurism studies, and we've done those in Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls, and even looked at some other cities in a less detailed way. And I commend you, because that's what those studies say, that cooperation between governments is essential, and secondly, that we have an invisible state boundary. And so you have just done a really meaningful thing along with Mayor Powers in Spokane. Based on that, let's talk about some of those issues that down the road that will undergo some changes. We have also, both in Spokane and here, organizations that deal with the economy and jobs, particularly Jobs Plus for us, and our great friend Bob Potter in that board. In your discussions with cities and counties, and that's why I'm so pleased to call this program a look at the future of the Inland Northwest. What is on the horizon for us economically? You know, it's been a difficult year across the country, and certainly North Idaho, our unemployment rate seems to always be higher than some other parts of the state. What are you and government talking about concerning economic development? I know that was one of the centerpieces of your platform when you ran for the office.
It was, and the first thing I think we're talking about is how do we pool our resources and our dollars and our infrastructure and our ability for improved legislation that might recruit businesses to our area. The competition is extremely strong today when it comes to recruiting businesses to the area. So I think the number one thing is the partnerships, because if Jobs Plus has to fund themselves and work in isolation as opposed to working with the county and the city and Spokane, they won't be as effective. But if we all work together in a stronger unit to recruit, we're going to be better off. So that's probably the first thing we're doing is strengthening ourselves through the combined energies and dollars for recruitment.
I apologize to you and our viewers. I've got this terrible cold and occasionally I can't resist the cough. In relation to that, something's been happening here, and I assume in other parts of the country, but your city, or the city of Coeur d'Alene, and some other governments have worked in cooperation with the private sector, Jobs Plus, which is a private corporation, to join funds and resources to recruit. And I know Bob Potter tells me that he has a criteria that's very meaningful, that one, he's not looking to recruit industry that has just minimum wage jobs. Right. He's also not recruiting industry if they don't support and celebrate differences in diversity. And so all that is creates several thousand jobs, but really with some choice involved rather than begging just any industry. So based on that, share a little bit with our viewers about why that partnership between government and the private sector benefits both.
Well, you know, if we're going to keep up, particularly in our area with growth, we have to build our tax base. I mean, we can't put the burden continually on just those that are here. So the recruitment of those jobs not only increases employment opportunity here, but it also builds the tax base as an overall feature for government. Strong economic employment is an economic factor for both the public sector and the private sector. So it's really important that we incorporate those people in with the new buildings, the new property values, plus the new jobs, and it's a benefit to both.
Now here comes my bias. Being at North Idaho College and having a great affection for this institution, and you certainly have had, would you share that the previous mayor was working on this in the city council, and now you are too. And by the way, your council is very, very cooperative in this area. Talk about partnership between the city of Coeur d'Alene and another city of Post Falls is doing this now, with Institute of Higher Learning, particularly North Idaho College, and of course another University of Idaho, and Lewis Clark State College. And I believe you were even looking at some things in the Post Falls area with Washington State University and others. And just share with our viewers from out of state, which there are a lot of them, what is happening to higher education working with local government.
Well, we're fortunate, number one, because we're working closely together, and that doesn't always happen. But in our state, higher education and government are working very closely together. In Coeur d'Alene specific, we're looking at, as you know, a new educational corridor on the river. We're very excited about that project. Probably we'll sign our first papers with the University of Idaho and North Idaho College combined in the next several weeks. So that is exciting. When you go out to recruit new corporations, new jobs, and the new job market, one of the first questions they always ask is, what do you have in your city in the way of higher education, both for our children to be educated with, but for training for the people that we need in these new corporations that are coming. So that's a big issue in recruitment. So higher education, its partnership with government is important for that reason, and we're fortunate that it's working so well here.
But you're bringing something to the table there. Your husband's a teacher,
yes, he is.
And you've been a teacher, so you can bring to the table some understanding of that from a practical viewpoint.
I think so. I mean, for me, I feel fortunate that I have both private sector and public sector experience in my background, quite a bit of both, and so you know, we will just be stronger if we learn from each other there. I think that's a real asset. I enjoy when I see those public-private partnerships formed. We always get a better product.
And one final question before I go back to the panel, and that is that we're taping the show in April, it'll air later. There was an announcement at the University of Idaho and I believe the Chamber in Post Falls and others that with the engineering department and others of the University of Idaho out at their site at Post Falls and an industrial research center, that they're already beginning, I believe they're going to bring a rather significant company here with a federal contract. So all of that will fit into your tax base and jobs and contribute to education. Would that be correct?
That's correct, for the county as a whole and for Post Falls specific. But I think you're referring to probably to Dr. Gary Mackey, and as you bring in a company of that caliber, they recruit for you. People follow him, people know of him, people want to be where he is and where his company is. So if you land one of those, so to speak, they do the recruiting for you in a lot of ways.
They're a major researcher and,
Yes.
and has some real breakthroughs. Janelle Burke.
We've talked a little bit about economics and we've talked about education, but one of the reasons that people move to Coeur d'Alene or live in Coeur d'Alene, continue to live in Coeur d'Alene, is for quality of life. What is your city administration doing about quality of life, and what do you look forward to? What do you think the plan should be for the future to ensure that we keep that quality of life?
Right. Well, that's a good question. Number one, we aren't going to keep our area a secret, and people are going to move here. And when you have rapid growth, I think quality of life is a difficult issue, because we're talking about water and clean air and all of the things that come with quality of life and safety. But as a city, the first thing I think we're doing is we're doing some very long-range planning. We're planning out of our own box. We're planning in cooperation with other entities. So planning is a big issue, trying to figure what the population is going to be, what is our growth going to be, how can we maintain the quality that we have now. I think water, I'll give you water as an example. There's certainly a lot of emphasis right now on how important it's going to be to study the aquifer, have the facts, and know how to manage that for future growth, and that is what quality of life is all about.
And also park systems, quality of life in respect to being able to go around our city. Many people in our area know about the Centennial Trail. What is happening with it?
Well, the good news about the Centennial Trail is one, it's a beautiful trail and has been, but one of the more dangerous parts of it, Northwest Boulevard, that is being moved while we're changing Northwest Boulevard now. So it will be moved off of the boulevard and into the wooded area and down through Johnstone property and eventually along the river, which will really be a nice asset. So we're always looking at upgrading Centennial and all the park system. We are fortunate because we are really probably up to speed as far as the amount of land we own for parks. We're getting there as far as the developed land besides. So with the addition of Cherry Hill and what's coming on in Cherry Hill, we are in really good position in Coeur d'Alene.
Now, Coeur d'Alene is not a town that has a lot of room to expand. So when we're talking about growth, we're talking about growth within the city for the most part. Is that how you would see it? Or do you see the city annexing additional areas?
Well, we're annexing all the time a little bit, trying to get our boundaries. There'll be a portion, a little spot annexation, which it doesn't always happen, but in our case, there are these spots that the county had, and then so we're making those boundaries a little, more even, so to speak, as far as zoning and annexation. We might look at annexation in the future to some degree, but I think more than that is growth means the growth all around us. So when the areas around us, Fernan, Hayden Lake, Post Falls, and all of those grow, it does have an impact on us. And so whether we grow just within our city limits is important, but it's also important to realize the growth all around us, because they're going to come in and use our lake and use our downtowns and use our parks.
I'm sure this way in the future. I don't want to upset anyone, but we are boxed in by the lake and that area. But I look
boundaries.
I look west though, at the Indian Meadows area, and Janelle, there's really some great room to grow out there because the city geographically could grow. And then going north, where we already have annexed, there's still, as you said, there's room for development. So I think Coeur d'Alene can continue to grow. Would you agree, Mayor?
I would.
Mm-hmm. I want to deal a little more with the water issue. The Rathdrum Aquifer is one of the great aquifers of the world, and it provides what I call the lifeblood to over 400,000 people. And that's one reason I want to commend you so much for being so visionary to meet with people in Spokane, like the mayor of Spokane, because we're all in this together. In fact, of the 400,000 people, about 300,000 drink the water across the border. And I just love the idea of the partnership. So based on that, what I've been reading in the last few days, I believe business, chambers of commerce, and governments, aren't you putting together a coalition that's going to maybe spend millions of dollars on a study about the most precious thing for our continued survival would be, of course, our water.
Right. And that is a large coalition coming together to put that study together. And I think the issue of the study is, one, we can't proceed without having facts that we all agree upon.
Right.
So it's important with this study that all of the players come to the table, agree on how the study is going to look, who's going to do it, and then another important factor is how are we going to manage it once we get those facts. So that once we have that, we have total buy-in and we do a good job, because you're right, it's the number one asset we have, one of the number one assets. We can't let it go.
I call that vision because you have to know all the things before you can make some of the decisions that will be long-lasting, long after we're all gone from here.
Right.
I had a wonderful opportunity, I believe it was 1987 or 88. The Spokesman Review, 50 years before that, had brought 5 people together and predicted what Spokane would be like in 50 years. And they sealed it away and they opened it, and one of those predicted 1 million people in Spokane. That was quite missed. Then 4 people in Spokane and I were invited to make a prediction of what life would be like in 50 years. Fortunately, we won't have to defend it. We won't be around when that happens. But I say all that to say this, and it's been sealed away. One of the things I'm very interested in relation to that is transportation. And so as we become so urban between Coeur d'Alene through Post Falls, which is growing so rapidly, and the valley, and now we have Liberty Lake incorporated, and there's other debates of other incorporations over in Spokane. That's going to be just a belt through there. In your studies and talks, particularly with Mayor Powers, what do you see in the area of maybe mass transit or some kind of public transportation that will move people from Coeur d'Alene all the way into the heart of Spokane?
Well, I don't have the exact answer about what I see, but what I do see is that I think many people recognize the need to get it planned right now. And if it's rail or whatever we're going to use, we need to be sure that we are in a position to have that in place when we do need it. If we had the mass transit right now, I don't know that it could support itself. We don't have the population now. The question is, like you say, are we thinking 50 years down the road, 30 years down the road, 20? So there are a lot of concerned people about mass transit, and I think that you will see that come online as far as more involvement, more study. Mr. Powers and I haven't visited with that specific issue as much as we have with water right now, because the water is such an issue, as are quality jobs for this minute. But it's certainly there, and I think you'll see a good coalition come forward to get that study going.
Thank you. Janelle Burke.
One of the things that the chief executive of a city government is involved in is employee relationships. And that's true no matter where a person is the mayor. There are going to be a number of people who work in the city. What is your philosophy with regard to city employees? Because one of the major employers in the city of Coeur d'Alene is the city. I'm sure that's true in Spokane and Spokane County, that many people are involved in government employment. What is your philosophy?
Well, number one, my philosophy is that they are our number one asset in the city. As far as our government is concerned, it's not our buildings, it's not what we own. I mean, our employees are our number one asset. I personally ran at this time because I felt the staff was the best that it had ever been, and I can tell you I believe that even more since I've been in office. I like the philosophy of working as a team. I like the philosophy of being a family, and that's where they're headed. I like the philosophy of dealing with high values, and that we set the standard and we raise the bar all the time. I like employees and council and myself and all of us to be really aware of what customer service is and give the very best customer service we can. But they need to be acknowledged. My goal is to market them, so to speak. I don't know that the citizens are aware of what this staff does on a daily basis and what an asset they are to the community, and the longevity of the employees that we have is centuries and centuries of time in the longevity that they've been there, and that asset is just not replaceable for us.
Now, along that same line, there are also many security issues in a city the size of Coeur d'Alene, and that's particularly true because Coeur d'Alene has a lot of visitors. It's a a community in which a lot of people who are tourists come and visit. And so we maybe have some demands on services that wouldn't be there in other communities that are more standalone. And along that line, what kinds of special procedures have to be followed, if you will, with regard to security?
Well, security really is in the hands of like all the different departments they have. For instance, if you talked with Sid Frederickson at Wastewater Management, he would have some very strict rules that are followed for that area, as would police and fire and so forth. So while I might not be able to put my finger, nor should I, on probably each one of those security methods, I can guarantee the citizens that they are very much in place and could be triggered at any second. So we've looked at security, we understand the risks, we understand what's out there, and we hope we never have to use them, to tell you the truth, but they really are in place, and each one of the departments in each area is just an expert in what it would take to keep those areas secure and the citizens secure.
I did some programs in the past through the University of Idaho about model communities, one in San Jose, one in Boise, and then I personally know about one in Tennessee, and it has a lot of diversity in what people can do. You know, it has a quality environment, prosperous economic base, but it also has such things as very good library facilities and recreation, and something is happening here that's very exciting, and I want to give you the chance to address that. First, let's talk about libraries. Our city has been supportive of the library concept, and I think there's something new on the horizon there.
There is, definitely. First of all, the city gave the library, as you know, some land. It wasn't enough for the type of library that we're looking at for the future, a much expanded facility, much more than just a library, so to speak. And so they've also purchased some property in cooperation with the Lake City Development Corps. And that will be centered now, right next to City Hall and a budding McEwen playfield, and be a part of that whole gorgeous public corridor. And we're excited about it.
And overlooking one of the beautiful lakes of the world.
Absolutely.
Again, there was some imagination there. You have a library foundation that, first of all, got the additional land that you gave some money to, over $1 million, to purchase the rest of the land. And now they're raising, I've heard figures, $5 or $6 million for the construction. And when the Library Foundation finishes it, it's my understanding that they turn it over to the city, and then the city has a library governing board. So it's kind of like the Jobs Plus in the cities. You're trying to pardon through all this process, and in bringing in the citizens in, doesn't that make it easier for you when there's a foundation out there that says, we'll raise the money for you?
It makes it easier, but we still have a big responsibility there. Sure. It certainly makes it easier because, again, you have a passion from people that want the library, and they're putting their efforts to that cause. And I think that's what makes it so special, is that people can step forward where their passions are, raise the money, make things happen in partnership with others. So,
you know, I wouldn't let you get off the program without talking about the next point. You were at a press conference. It'd be one of the most favorite press conferences I've been at, and Greg Carr was here from the Carr Institute for Human Rights Studies at Harvard, a native of Idaho, and he gave the Human Rights Education Foundation, which you've been so supportive of, $1 million. Now that foundation, like the Library Foundation, has to go out and raise money too for whatever it winds up doing in the end. And I just want you to give you, as our mayor and our chief executive, an opportunity to talk about what this work in human rights can mean to the future of our city and the whole region.
Well, I think you're asking the wrong person. I ought to be asking you this question. I think you're the leader there, Tony. But obviously, I think it speaks so highly of the community, what a community that really cares can do when they come together under an adverse situation. And the publicity now is beginning to turn, and people are seeing what an effort, led by you and others, this community put forth in order to make that happen, and to build our community, and to say all are welcome, and to build the idea of human rights here. I think it set an example, and people will be looking to us for that, and that's what we want. Anytime we can set an example, we are so much better off.
I also want to publicly thank you at the Human Rights Banquet this year, which is a packed house. It's a very popular banquet. In your address, welcoming people from other parts of our inland Northwest and even further away, you indicated that even though that we had tackled a certain problem and solved it through the legal process, and now have our Human Rights Center, as long as there is prejudice and bigotry anywhere else, like the movement to Pennsylvania, that there's still a problem. And I read that to be so commendable and so unselfish. That is, even though you may be on top of a problem in one's own community, you worry about other places. And
Absolutely, and I truly do believe that. And it goes back to the example. We need to set the example, which goes beyond just being in our own box. But we truly do need to reach out to those people. We've learned a lot over these years, and if we can help them, why wouldn't we, so to speak? So, and we're going to need to learn other things from other communities, and hopefully they'll be good teachers just as we can be for them.
we have about 50 seconds left, and in that 50 seconds, tell us a little about the recreation. There's a lot of sports, and a lot of it's organized by the city. There's a lot of, this is a play city too, a lot of playing.
Well, this is the recreational center of the, I call it of the world, but can you imagine any place else that would have more beautiful parks, a lake, hiking, skiing, all the things that we have to offer that are part of our natural environment. And then on top of it, we have people who want to develop these parks and put their money and their time and their effort to develop other recreational facilities besides I mean, we're very fortunate here.
I sound like I'm part of the Chamber of Commerce, but it's a play area year-round. You know, you can ski in the winter, you can water ski in the summer, you can have tennis, you can have golf. We do provide all those different varieties, and so I just want to recognize the City of Coeur d'Alene's had an important role to play in that process. With that, Mayor Sandy Bloom of Coeur d'Alene, we want to thank you on behalf of Janelle and our staff for being with us. It's our first time to interview you as our mayor, but we certainly have an open invitation for you to come back, and as you go down that road over the next 4 years to report with us, to our people, not only here but in Canada and 7 states, and invite them to come and to see us and to be part of how we live here. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest has been Mayor Sandy Bloom, who is the mayor of the City of Coeur d'Alene, and we've very much enjoyed this discussion with her about the future of the city government in the Northwest, not only our city, but also the surrounding areas in the Spokane area. Next week we'll come to yet another subject. I hope that you will join us at that time so that we can have you as our viewers on all these subjects we deal with. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running entirely college-produced program on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us again at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.